My name is Don King. I'm a surf cinematographer, but I shoot all kinds of other things for Hollywood movies and TV shows and commercials. I grew up here in Hawaii, and we go to the beach every weekend like most families, and so from a young age I was swimming in the ocean, and we'd go to Makapu, and so my dad was into body surfing, so he took me out there and got me into body surfing. I love the ocean and the waves. And then a friend had a waterproof camera, and he let me take turns shooting some surfing with him. And it was so much fun that I just thought, God, I really want to do this, so I need to get a camera. So I borrowed some money from my dad, and I bought a used waterproof camera and started shooting. My specialty is shooting surfing, and in big waves, small waves, but in the water, swimming around with a camera and getting really close to the action. The best thing about that job is that I love doing it. Even now, 50, 40 years later, I love that job. Yeah, so, I enjoy being in the water, in the waves, feeling the power of the waves, and all the creative and technical challenges that come with shooting surfing in the water. It's very difficult to do, so I never get the feeling like, oh, this is too easy. It's not always a thrill, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get the best shots I can, and sometimes it's a thrill. But it's taken bigger and bigger surf to make it thrilling. So, when I was younger, a small wave was like, whoa, heavy, scary. And as I got older, it took bigger and bigger waves, and I really thrived on that power of waves and of the ocean. So I really got into pipeline, because pipeline had the most powerful, spectacular waves. And by swimming with a camera or body surfing, you could get right in there and experience that energy and that power of the wave and the ocean. And so for me, that was the biggest part of the thrill, was the wave energy. And then the secondary thing was getting good shots and watching great surfing. And I'm fortunate that I got to photograph and work with the best surfers in the world. Well, I didn't really have to train per se, because I was training. I was on a swim team, and then in high school I started playing water polo, and I continued that through college. So I was already training. And then in my free time I was body surfing. So it was a perfect situation for me, because what I loved to do was training for the other thing I love to do. I got started when I was really young in photography, and I got really passionate about it when I was in high school. And so I was like just trying to shoot as much as I could and developing the film in the darkroom at school. And it paid off when I got a picture published, and it was on the cover of the poster annual for Surfing Magazine. It was like such a thrill, such a fulfillment for me. And it was a shot of my friend too, better yet, so we were both super, super excited. And from there I really got into doing still photography alongside of being a student. And I went to school on the mainland, but I took the winter quarter off so I could be home in Hawaii and shoot surfing. So during that time I was shooting still photos, and the opportunity came up to shoot some video for NBC Sports World. They were covering a contest, and a friend knew the producer and recommended me. And that was kind of my first real job in shooting motion. But it was a contest, so it's a little bit different than like a Hollywood film. After that, I started becoming more fascinated with shooting film, and so I started working on some surf movies just with 16mm cameras. And through that, I gradually got a job on a Hollywood film, The North Shore, which came to the North Shore of Oahu and shot. It was a very corny storyline, and it's kind of a cult classic now. And they needed surfing action, and they needed to tell a story in the water. There were certain events that happened in the water that they needed to convey, and that was kind of my introduction to really trying to tell a story with your shots. Up until then it was just get a good surf shot. It can be much more of a challenge to get a specific shot that tells a story than to just get a regular good surf shot. So it it was a thing where, like, I always enjoy a challenge, especially if it's within reach. You know, a challenge is great. And so for me, this was a perfect challenge to try to tell a story in the water with my shots, and it challenged me to kind of take another step in my evolution. And then through my work on underground surf films, I got a job on The Endless Summer too. And that was Bruce Brown, who had done The Endless Summer, the original Endless Summer, which was the surf film of all time. And so he had a big budget, and we shot in 35 millimeter film, so big cameras and really good equipment. And I got to travel to South Africa and Fiji and Indonesia with them and work on that film. So that was a real move forward in my career. Well, every job is different. It really varies. You know, sometimes they just want a montage of shots that give you a good feeling of surfing, and they just send you out to go do it. And the resume I have, people trust me now to get that. And every director is different. Some are more hands-off, and others are very much wanting to manage every shot. So then on the other side of that spectrum, sometimes the shots are extremely specific, and they have to be just perfect a certain way, and we'll do the same shot over and over and over to get that just right. One of my most challenging jobs early on was Castaway. And first of all, I was working with the very best people. So the standard of quality was the highest. And I knew that, and I respected that, and it really made me want to do my best. But also, it was telling a specific story, and the story is Tom Hanks playing this guy who's shipwrecked on the island, and he tries to get off the island first in this rubber rescue raft. And the scene I shot, he's paddling out through the waves, and then he goes right up the top of the wave and gets pitched over the falls. And so that's a tricky shot to get. And there are all the other little shots in that sequence that lead up to that moment that I needed to get also. And it was really up to me to get all those pieces independently, because they didn't have any way to see what I was shooting. Now everything's digital, and often we're transmitting an image back to the director so he can see live while we're shooting. And at that time it was film, and they had to ship the film to California and send it back. So a week later we got to see it, and when they saw the shots, they were so excited. You know, it was like high fives all around. So that was a great moment. In so many ways, it's so much easier now to shoot with digital cameras. The biggest difference is that you can shoot a lot more. In film, I had 2 or 4 minutes of film in the camera. And after shooting that film, I would have to swim in or go to a boat, sometimes, you know, a long swim into the beach, and then reload, and then swim all the way back out. It takes a lot of time, and it causes you to be way more conservative with what you do shoot. You know, you don't want to waste any film. And so digital is very freeing, very liberating. You can just roll all the time, shoot all kinds of stuff. I use a variety of cameras, and I've used everything from an IMAX camera that was like huge and probably weighed 80 pounds to you know, GoPro cameras. But in general, the camera I like to use the most is a Red Epic camera, and it's about 20 pounds with the housing and the camera and the batteries and everything included. So the key is that it floats a little bit in the water. So I can rest by letting the camera float, and I can push the camera around through the water without physically lifting it out. But it doesn't float too much, because I want to be able to dive under waves easily. So you just want a little bit of buoyancy on your camera. Then when I lift it out of the water to shoot, that's when I'm kind of relying on my water polo strength of swimming with your hands out of the water. And that gets a little harder. You know, I've been really lucky. I haven't been seriously hurt, but I have been run over a couple times and gotten stitches from skegs hitting me. Yeah, one time was a foil board. That was the scariest thing, because Those foils are just like a big giant blade in the water, and they've got a lot of weight behind them, and yeah, that was scary. I've always felt really confident in the ocean, really maybe too confident sometimes, but really confident. And so I run into situations that seem impossible. I remember one time on the Nepali coast, I was swimming against the current and trying to get back from one beach to another along the cliffs, and going as fast as I could and looking at the cliff and not making any headway, you know, and you kind of realize that this is a dangerous situation. There's nobody around that's going to help you, and so I just had to figure it out for myself. Okay, how long can I sprint for? Because I've got to be at a sprinting speed, and what can I do to make my way up the current better, you know? So it was like, yeah, it was one of those things, you know, it's just like, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna do it, you know. So I've always had that kind of confidence. And then, you know, in big surf, I've always had a lot of confidence, but at the same time, a lot of respect for the waves and developed experience and judgment. So on a really big day, I'm not gonna put myself in the worst situation, no way. You know, I'm gonna be safe about it. And I see and I know where I can be and still be relatively safe, but be right next to all that power. One of the toughest things about my job is trying to get good shots when the waves aren't good, because a lot of the jobs I work on are commercials or TV shows, and they just schedule the shoot for a certain date. And I always try to encourage them to have some flexibility in their schedule, but usually if they say it's going to be Monday, it's Monday, and you get the best shots you can with the waves you have that day. And when I was younger, it was all about waiting for the best days, because that's when you're going to get all the good shots. So you want to be there when the waves are really good. Now it's more about making the conditions you have work for you to get great images no matter what. And if the waves aren't that great, you're not showcasing the wave as much as you're just trying to show the talent or the surfer and the emotion of what they're doing. The joy in what they're doing is more important than a perfect wave, you know. So you get in, if the waves are really junk, you get in closer shots and some underwater shots and things like that, where the energy is all right around you and in front of you, and the water's moving near the lens, and so you get the feeling, the great feeling that people get when they go surfing. And you know, if the waves are good and big, then you can pull back and see the whole scene more and see the whole wave more. Well, our son, Bo, has autism. He seemed fine when he was a baby, and at about 3 years old, he started to decline and lose some of his social ability. And it's a super scary thing as a parent. And at first, we didn't know what was happening. And it was only after a while that we realized that he had autism. But it was a very frustrating experience, because the doctors can diagnose autism, but it's basically just a diagnosis of symptoms. They don't really know the cause or what's going on, and it's so frustrating. It's like, come on, there's got to be a way to figure this out, you know. And Julianne and I, my wife Julianne and I, realized that we were now living a story that a lot of other people were dealing with, and so we felt like we really needed to tell our story to help the other people that were dealing with it, and also get everybody else to understand that this was happening. It was becoming way more common. So it felt so important to get that message out, that it totally overrode any feelings of protecting myself emotionally. It was like, yes, I want to bare my soul to the world, because this is too important not to. You know, it's way beyond me. This is not about me. You know, this is about something that's happening to so many hundreds of thousands of kids. And I don't think it necessarily has to be happening. I think we can find solutions. You know, I think there are potentials for prevention and for cures. And there is progress being made in that way, but we just wanted to do whatever we could to help speed that process up, and for ourselves to try to find answers for our son to help him. I think the film came out in 2007, but we filmed, my son was born in 2000, and so we had footage in the film from the time he was born, but really his autism came about in 2003, and we started shooting maybe shortly thereafter, and the film came out in 2007, and it's been 11 years since then, and we had really great hopes for Bo making breakthrough progress, which hasn't really happened, but some interesting things have happened. He's become really outgoing, which is so unusual for autism. You know, autism is about being closed in, and he's very loving and outgoing, which I'm so grateful for, because it makes it really fun to be with him. And he still has a really hard time communicating, but he can understand well. And now we're looking at a new set of challenges because he's 18. He will be leaving the school system in a few years. And at that point, there are way less resources for people with disabilities like his. So Julianne's been working hard to start a program for young adults with autism and other developmental disabilities. And so she's actively trying to solve these problems before Bo really gets there. I have a great partner, and I'm so grateful for her and all her strengths, you know, and Julianne has really been the one to say, we're going to help everybody else who's in the same boat that we're in, and we're all in this boat together, and she's been a great advocate for the community. And together we started Hawaii Autism Foundation, but she's the driving force, and she's the one who's really coming up with ideas to solve the problems. She sees a need in the autism community, and then she comes up with a program to solve that need or to meet that need, and then she finds partners to help implement that, and then she goes out and fundraises and raises the money to support those programs. So I kind of tag along with her on that and help a little bit on the side, but it's mostly Julianne doing that work with a great set of collaborators. She's got great people that she brings in to help her to run Hawaii Autism Foundation and to run the programs. My advice for parents that have a child with autism and they're new to this whole journey is be positive, be hopeful. Make sure you take care of yourself, because that's where your strength starts, is with yourself. And if you're too stressed out, you're too close to the breaking point, that's just going to be harder for your whole family. So you've got to make sure you take care of yourself through that whole process. And it's a marathon, you know. It's in the beginning you feel like it's so urgent, you've got to find answers, but you got to gear up for a marathon. But it's very hopeful. You know, there are some kids with the right treatment early on, they can totally turn around. So that was the hope driving Julianne and I still see that hope, and especially for the younger kids. But I still have hope for both. I think there are going to be advancements in new treatments. The brain is able to constantly change and adapt. I think what's happening with autism is an ongoing situation in the brain. And if we can find the right thing biomedically, that can be reversed and the brain can heal itself. And so I feel like it's never too late, but the best time is when kids are young, you know, to get on special diets and behavioral interventions, and you know, there are a number of things that have been shown to work. Then there's a whole bunch of other things that people are trying and sometimes work for some kids, and they may not be proven scientifically to work, but if you feel like it's the right thing for your kid, it might help them. So it's a really tricky situation because the medical establishment doesn't have good answers. Parents are still kind of on their own to try to figure out what could work for my child. And I think you know, there are many therapies that have been tried and have been studied and maybe only had a success rate of 2% or 5%. And so the conclusion of the study was, well, this doesn't work. But I feel like, hey, if my kid was in that 2% that it worked for, you know, I wouldn't have known if I hadn't tried. So there are some things like that in treating autism that are kind of a long shot. But I think a lot of treating autism just points to trying for optimal health. And so that's always a good thing. You know, if you're doing a diet that you think is going to give your child's brain the optimal nutrition for their brain and the optimal health for their brain, that's great. That's totally worth it. Even if you don't see results directly, you know you're doing the best you can to set them up for success. So I think a lot of the treatments in autism are like that. You know, the lab tests will evaluate for deficiencies, and working with a holistic doctor, they might say, well, I think your child should take these supplements. Autism has been a huge effect on our family. I think emotionally it's brought us together into a common purpose, and spiritually for me it's really opened my eyes up to the variety of people in the world and how we are all faced with different challenges. Individually, you know, everybody is different and everybody can reach a different level of success, and so you kind of recognize what I can do easily might not be easy for someone else, you know, and it's okay. It's not their fault. And especially, you know, when you see a kid with autism, it's a little easier to realize it's not their fault. But there's a wide spectrum of people in the world who may not be as good as you are at something, and it's easy to be judgmental, but more realistically, they're different, and so it's different for them. And it really opens your eyes up to that. My work energizes me for being at home and being patient with Bo because it's exciting. I get well paid, so the fact that I work part-time is okay, and it gives me more time to be with my family, and the work satisfies me creatively and socially so that I can spend more time with Bo when I'm home. And spending more time with Bo when I'm home makes me really appreciate my work and feel like I'm privileged to be out there working in a great field. And, you know, when I get a job, it can be the hardest job, but in a way I feel like I'm on vacation because it can be harder to be home dealing with a child with autism. I think autism has been so difficult, and it's still emotionally difficult, and it's sad when you see your child and their peers, and you see, you know, other kids progressing way beyond where your child is at. It's really sad. It's always heartbreaking. And yet you realize that you're not the only one. You know, there are a lot of other people in the world that are suffering in different ways, or with autistic children. And I think you just see more compassion for the world because, you know, it's not easy. It's hard. And the more you talk to people, the more you find out, wow, they've got some story of difficulty or tragedy in their family that they've been dealing with, and at some point, you know, everybody's got to deal with some level of heartbreak and difficulty. Autism has taught me to appreciate things more. So I appreciate when Bo can make a sentence, I'm really proud of him, and I really appreciate that, you know. And it's like, who would have thought as a parent that you could appreciate something so simple, you know, but you can. And Bo's taught me to enjoy life. You know, he is like the happiest person I know, and it's infectious, you know. And sometimes I'm not feeling that happy, and he'll just be in my face with a big smile, and it's like, how can you not smile? Something I really love about Bo is that he's like my my partner in the water. He's my buddy. He's my body surfing friend who will always go with me. And he doesn't care if the waves are junk. He does care if it's cold, but you know, it's never too cold here. And it's partly because I always took him in the water. So he's gotten used to bigger waves. And we're both comfortable with it, but it's more than that. He loves the water. He is so joyful in the water. Like, he might be a little stressed on shore or you know, during the day, and once we're in the water, he's laughing and smiling, and he's just so happy, and he's just emotionally transparent. You know, you can just see his emotions right on his face, and he's always happy when he gets in the water. And I think it's a reminder for me. It's like, yeah, the water makes me happy too. I don't always acknowledge it, but it does. I don't take him out when the North Shore is super huge, but Makapu is never too big for him. I've taken him out on the biggest days at Makapu. And one day when he was a lot younger, he was maybe 8 years old or something, it was a really big day, and he told me, "Dad, it's too big." And I thought, wow, that's good. You're telling me, you know, you're not comfortable and you've reached your limits. Are you sure, Bo? Because you've been out on days almost this big. And he said, it's too big. And I looked down at him, and he was trying to put the fin on. And I gave him the wrong fin from my other son. And I said, oh, the fin's too big. And he's like, it's too big. And so I ran and got the other fins. He put them on, and we swam out. He was laughing and having a great time, even though the waves were huge. One day he was laughing so much in the water that I had to try to get him to calm down and stop laughing, because I was worried he wouldn't get enough air. Because we'd come up after getting pounded, and he would be laughing so hard, and another wave's coming. And I said, Bo, come on, stop, take a breath. And he didn't want to, because he was just having so much fun. I don't know if he inherited his comfortableness in the water, but Julianne's also a great swimmer, and she loves the ocean too. So he might have inherited that, but I think it's also just from going in the ocean so much, and the ocean is a naturally healing place that naturally makes you feel good. So he's just gotten used to that and thriving on that. Well, I don't do as much as I should for my spiritual and physical health, but I would say work is really good. It's often physical, and it's often social, and it's often very mentally challenging. So to me, those things are all renewing, as long as it's not too much to the point where it's a burnout, you know. So I think for me, really, swimming in the ocean is the thing that really keeps me centered. Being in nature for me is spiritual renewal and enrichment, and the ocean is one aspect of that. And the nice thing about the ocean is that in Hawaii it's so available. It's right there, and once you get out in the waves, you're in the wilderness and you're in nature. And you can find it in the mountains too, and I love doing that as well. Or, you know, when I was younger especially, I really loved camping on Kauai and Molokai and going to remote valleys and swimming along the coastlines and camping out. Yeah, that was super spiritual for me. Well, I hope to be doing what I'm doing for a lot longer, and I'll just do the best I can at whatever level I can, but the imagery will always be exciting. Visually, so many things visually excite me, and nature and the ocean. So I want to be pursuing that for the rest of my life. And I don't have, you know, it's an interesting point, and I feel like I should spend more time thinking about my dreams. When I was younger, I had really strong dreams about what I wanted to do, and I would visualize, fantasize, and visualize about reaching a success in a goal that I had. And maybe it was too ambitious to even call it a goal, but I would just dream about a situation, you know, and a lot of those dreams came true, you know, and more dreams I didn't even know about came true. So there's a lot of power in visualization and a lot of power in dreaming about what you want. But I think one of the things I really love doing is traveling with my wife, Julianne, and with our son, Bo, and also without Bo, and having more adventures together around the world. It's something that we did when we first got together. We were adventuring a lot, and that was my life at that time, and it was really fun. And it made it easier to raise a family and have to let that go, knowing I had some great adventures when I was younger. So I look forward to more adventures in the future. And work-wise, it's hard to point to one job that it was the pinnacle of my career, and I've had many jobs that I feel like were the pinnacle of my career. Films that I worked on. I got to direct and shoot the opening sequence for a James Bond film, which was like a total fantasy for me from when I was a kid and read all the James Bond books and stuff. And so it was a surfing sequence in big waves, and I worked with Laird Hamilton, and we got a really good day at Jaws and made a beautiful sequence for the opening of the film. Working with Bethany Hamilton, telling her life story in the Soul Surfer film, and that was very fulfilling and meaningful and challenging. And I shot the surfing parts of it, and I also worked with the actors shooting as a camera operator, shooting the acting. And working on Castaway was a highlight experience, of course, with Tom Hanks. He was so great to work with and such a great guy. And just I think doing the Quicksilver trips on the Indies Trader, and we explored Indonesia, and I was working with Kelly Slater and Tom Carroll, and just great surfers in the most amazing, perfect waves with nobody else around. It's like total dream come true. And then working with Laird Hamilton. Over the years, I've worked a lot with Laird, and he's a real inspiration to me. He is very spiritual, and you wouldn't know it, but he's very spiritual, he's very disciplined, he's really passionate about what he's doing, and he's really fun to be with. The American Express commercial was the first commercial that I directed, but I directed another commercial with Laird, Cool Water Cologne, and I directed some second unit shooting on Endless Summer 2 and Die Another Day. Directing hasn't been a focus for me. I really enjoy the camera side of it, and it can be hard to do both, to direct and shoot things, and so it really helps to collaborate with a good director and have someone else involved. It just makes it that much better what you can achieve. But I like the challenge of directing. I've done some projects for Apple where I was co-director. One of the things that makes it really tough to do both is, as a director, you need to pull back enough to see everything that's happening. And as a cameraman, you want to get right in there. And especially if I'm shooting something in the water, I'm in the water, I'm swimming around with a camera. It's hard for me to communicate with everybody else about what they should be doing at that time. So, for example, we're shooting surfing in Tahiti, and we've got like 9 cameras going shooting the same action. So I'm focused on organizing the cameras and what all the cameramen are doing, and it's good to have someone else involved who can be focused on the talent and what they're doing, and then it's the synergy of all of that that makes the best product. And that's one of the things I love about working on Hollywood projects, is that it's a collaboration. You're working with other really good people. To me, Aloha is like just extending that friendship and community feeling towards others that you see, and you know, recognizing that we're all in this together. You know, we're all going through this life together, and you are just like me, and I want to help you out. You know, and I want to be friendly and nice and welcoming to everybody. And I love that about Hawaii, that there is really still a lot of aloha around, you know, and I experience that all the time. You know, I'm gifted with aloha from others all the time, and so it would only feel wrong to me to not be extending